Welcome back to Kasie DC. Tomorrow, there is going to be a rare free-for-all on the Senate floor as senators put out their immigration plans. A Republican group is unveiling one plan tonight to address border security and ensure the future of so-called dreamers. Joining me now to talk more about that is Senator James Lankford, Republican of Oklahoma. Senator, thanks so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Glad to do it, Kasie.
Senator, you and a group of other conservatives in the Senate have pulled together a plan that you are releasing tonight that you say hits on the 4 pillars that the White House has laid out. Is this essentially the White House plan? And can you walk us through what you're proposing?
Yeah, the best we can determine this is trying to work with the White House to be able to determine what's a White House compromise. They've listened to all voices for the past many months. We're trying to be able to form a compromise with them and trying to pull from voices from everybody in the whole process. This outlines the 4 pillars that the president has talked about. It deals with border security. It actually gives citizenship, which a lot of people said President Trump would never agree to, but he has been very outspoken to say 1.8 million dreamers under this proposal would actually get citizenship in this process. It deals with some of the issues, though, that come up as well, the issues about diversity lottery and about family unification and the policies that we have to deal with. I think a lot of people don't understand there's a 20-year backlog right now for the family reunification process. When 1.8 million people are added as well into this, that's going to make a 25-30-year backlog, and it's continuing to make this more difficult. So we're trying to resolve multiple issues at once that all happen.
One issue that has become a particular flashpoint is the issue of children who come here unaccompanied minors. Yeah. And this bill would change the policy and give the Department of Homeland Security more leeway to send unaccompanied children back to where they came from. Is that a humane policy?
So actually what we're trying to do with Kasie is that there's one policy if they come from Cuba, there's another policy if they come from Honduras, another policy if they come from Canada or Mexico, and so we're trying to just make one consistent immigration policy. We want due process in this, and it's a misnomer to say this takes away due process. It absolutely does not. It provides a consistent due process, and one of the issues that we face is if they come from Mexico, they have a due process that may last a couple of weeks, and then they're actually returned back to home country. If they come from Honduras, that process may last 2.5, 3.5 years of that. So we need to find a way to be able to make sure that we're consistent, but that yes, every single person gets due process. Some of these individuals are coming for asylum, and it's asylum that they should actually have in this. And so we want to make sure that they're heard, they get in front of an immigration judge in a timely format, and that we make decisions.
It seems relatively clear already, Senator, that this plan is unlikely to get 60 votes in the Senate because Democrats seem unlikely to support it. There have been conversations among your colleagues about a more limited proposal around this in the event that a broader bill can't pass. Could you potentially support a more limited solution that addresses status for DACA children as well as some border security, but doesn't enact these broader reforms?
I could not actually, because all of them actually are connected. As I mentioned before, when you add 1.8 million people in the process, this takes a 20-year backlog to probably a 30-year backlog and continues to accelerate an ongoing process. Some of these issues have been around a long time, and they've just not been partisan issues. They were in the 2013 bill. In 1995, Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, a Democrat that was leading up a group looking at immigration in 1995, made these same proposals on family unification and skills-based. So these are not new ideas. There's something that had been examined for a very long time with a lot of hearings, and we just think that they absolutely go together.
I noticed, Senator, that you're using the phrase family reunification. The White House has been using the phrase chain migration. Do you think that the White House should be talking about this the way you are?
I think there's multiple ways to do it. Again, chain migration of late has become a toxic word. It wasn't a toxic phrase in 2013 when the Gang of 8 bill. They often use the term chain migration. Of late, there's some people that say they don't like that term. The real issue is how do we actually handle family reunification and to make sure that this works not only for the American people, but for those families as well.
There are some conservatives who have labeled this path to citizenship that's in this bill for DACA recipients and dreamers, even people who have not applied for that status, as amnesty. Do you see this as amnesty?
I don't see it as amnesty. It's an area that the president has moved on significantly over the past year as well. The reason I don't see it as amnesty, these are individuals that came as minors. As often you hear the phrase, if someone is pulled over for speeding, the ticket goes to the driver, not to the 4-year-old sitting in the back seat. This was the child that was in the back seat, literally, in this situation, that they were brought in the country. They grew up in the country. They pledged allegiance to our flag. They know English. They've been educated in our schools. They already have jobs, or they're in the military, or they're in our colleges now. These are folks that don't know any other country, and the disadvantage they have is dissimilar from their parents that grew up in another country. These individuals grew up in our country, and they could be very productive parts of our society, and I don't see any reason to be able to hold that back from them. So this is something that it has been an ongoing issue for the White House. They have been very clear that they want to be able to move on this.
Senator, I want to switch gears just for a moment, because you also are a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and you have, by all accounts, been playing a key role in the report that we know the committee is preparing on interference by the Russians in the 2016 elections in preparation for the midterm elections coming up. Can you give us an update on the status of that report and weigh in on the reports we had this week about voter rolls actually being penetrated by the Russians?
Yeah, so let me give you several things on this. One of the things I've been working in a bipartisan way to be able to actually get an election security bill. There's absolutely no question the Russians were trying to interfere in our election in 2016. They were in 21 different states probing their systems. Some they blocked, like in Oklahoma, the state that I'm from. The Russians probed it, were not able to get in. And other states, they were able to get in. They weren't able to change votes, but they were able to look at voter rolls, voter systems, all those things. We should be more aware of that. So I have a bipartisan bill to be able to work through how do we encourage DHS and mandate their cooperation with our states, that states still run election, but we've got more interaction. In the meantime, we just had a hearing last week with DHS where we drilled them about what are they doing right now, and I can tell you they're very engaged on this. They're meeting with the states, they're getting information, they're getting background security clearances, they're aggressively going after the preparation to be able to protect our elections that are coming up in the next few months now, so that's important. On top of all that, we do have a larger report that we've got to get done from the Senate Intelligence Committee. It's been our focus from the beginning to be a bipartisan supported report, that we're not trying to put out individual Republican or Democrat reports. Let's try to be able to put it out together to say, here are the facts that we've got, the best that we can put out in an unclassified method to let people see the whole of what has happened and what we think should happen in the days ahead to be able to protect our system.
And that report is on track for the end of the month?
I wish I could tell you it's for the end of the month. Every time we start going through the editing process, we find one more person that we need to be able to visit with. This has happened for several months. I honestly thought we would have that in by the end of last year, but there were additional people that we need to be able to connect with and be able to interview. So we're doing it as fast as we can and working as much as possible as we can across party lines. I think it's important not just for the president, but for the presidency that this is done right. And I think it's also exceptionally important that people see a nonpartisan, as much as possible, report come out, because this deals with elections that is already a partisan issue. But quite frankly, free and fair elections should not be a partisan issue.
And finally, Senator, I have to ask you before you go, you voted against this budget deal. Do you think that the Republican Party still has room for fiscal conservatives?
I think it does have room for fiscal conservatives, but we are waving a flag saying we have got to deal with a rising deficit. This is something that the Congressional Budget Office looked at even 5 years ago and said deficits are going down, but starting in 2017, they're going to start aggressively ticking up because some of the spending was actually put out into the future. Well, we're seeing that now, and then plus there's been disaster relief, obviously well over $100 billion this year in disaster relief from major hurricanes and fires and such, which is needed, but we've also got to be able to deal with the fiscal realities that we have. This will be the hard part for us in the days ahead. Spending more is not a problem in Washington. Spending less is the challenge. But for the future of the nation, we've got to be able to do it and do it well in a bipartisan way.
Senator James Lankford, thanks very much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.